Hi, Lloyd. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all doing amazing. Here is another episode of the Top 10 Best Films led by some of the greatest directors of all time. I am starting from 10 and then working my way up to numero uno, and yes indeed, I have seen every film of a particular artist that I will be covering, so these lists come from pure and passionate accuracy. Today, I decided I will be covering one of the most influential filmmakers in cinema, Stanley Kubrick. Born from a Jewish family in Manhattan, he was immediately keen to liberal arts as a youngster. He pursued film like no other, and he left behind such a legacy of film that has inspired countless artists after him, including yours truly. Anyone who has ever studied film or is currently working in the film industry has certainly heard of Stanley Kubrick in some way, shape, or form, or you must have heard of his films. I am very excited to rank them for you here, and yes, I say technically rank because Mr. Kubrick only, unfortunately, made a handful of films. The important thing is he made at least 10, so he has certainly qualified to make it on this segment, which, hey, this is going to be really fun. Stanley Kubrick was one of the most brilliant and yet difficult filmmakers in the industry. I'll get to how he was difficult later on, but I remember first learning about this man and his work in freshman year of high school. Having gone to a performing arts high school, my friends and I were a little more, how should I say, invested in the more artistic and classic films at the time. I remember all of us getting together and watching one of his movies together, and I remember my mind just being blown away from the detail and the visuals that I just had to know and learn more about film. Kubrick actually started off as a professional photographer, traveling abroad, photographing everything, and to this day, you can find art exhibits attributing Stanley Kubrick's film and photography work. Anybody can talk about his flaws all day long, but I'm not here to talk about his flaws. I'm here to share what was great about the man. He has indeed inspired me to learn and pursue film, but more so, to treat film like art. And I believe all of his films are indeed a work of art. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started on the top 10 best directorial efforts of the great Stanley Kubrick. Number 10, The Killing. Independent filmmaking at its best here, people. This was Stanley Kubrick's third feature film, but the first for him to use a cinematographer, funny enough. He was a professional photographer. What can a licensed and qualified cinematographer do? A whole freaking lot, actually, which Lucien Ballard certainly did. This film is shot beautifully. It tells the story of a 5-man team's plan to execute a $2 million robbery at a racetrack. Reportedly, from the great writer-director Quentin Tarantino, this film was a major influence for Tarantino's utterly fun and brilliant Reservoir Dogs. Not just for its story, but for the fact of the story being told in a non-linear narrative. This is one of the best heart-pounding movies I think you'll ever see, and I indeed recommend this one. Number 9, Spartacus. Okay, this film had a lot of issues, yes. Stanley Kubrick himself disowns this film. Yes, but honestly, when you look at the effort it took to direct a huge Roman gladiator epic like this, I would bow down to Kubrick in a second. Think about it, Kubrick was brought in after lead star Kirk Douglas, who was also co-producer, fired the original director Anthony Mann. So Kubrick agreed to take over directing this project on top of wrangling stars Kirk Douglas, Laurence Olivier, and Charles Laughton, which had very big egos. Let's put it that way. There was indeed drama galore. There were so many things in the script that Kubrick did not like, including the famous "I am Spartacus, no I am Spartacus" scene. But still, there are so many shots in this film that are incredible. Every battle scene is engaging. The performances from all the actors are still professional and wonderful. And I love that this is one of the films that helped bring back infamous screenwriter Dalton Trumbo to his rightful place in the screenplay credits. Despite its history of issues and conflict, this film still won 4 Oscars, including Best Cinematography, which is kind of funny how the cinematographer, Russell Meddy, even claimed he didn't shoot a lot of it. Kubrick did. They thought so much about it because of Kubrick's perfectionism, and Meddy kept storming off the set. Once again, with all of its craziness, I still have a high appreciation of this film. Number 8, Paths of Glory. I should have said in the very beginning, this ranking is indeed very, very tough, because all of Kubrick's films are so masterful, especially this one. This is such a valiant war film, or rather, anti-war film. Based on the novel of the same name by Humphrey Cobb, it tells the story of a French army in World War II, led by Kirk Douglas, who refused to attack an enemy position. So Douglas has to defend them against his superior, but at the same time, they need to be victorious. Kirk Douglas gives one of his absolute best performances here, and the tracking shots of the trenches from Kubrick? Oh my god. The shots may look familiar as they very much inspired the visually captivating war film 1917. Filmed in 1956, practically on location in Munich, Germany, only a couple of miles away from concentration camps. This war film excellently captures the grit, the guts, the nastiness of war, which is why it is still regarded as one of the greatest films ever. Fun fact, according to many sources, this is the favorite war film of John McCain. Sincerely, it's a powerhouse war film that, if you're a big war movie fan, add this to your must-see list. Number 7, Lolita. Yes, I know, this is going to be a very controversial piece for a lot of people, myself included. I'll admit, the film itself, as I think of the plot, is honestly, very troubling. But that's the whole purpose of the story. If you don't know the plot, here it is. A middle-aged professor named Humbert, I'm not kidding, moves into a new town, takes up room and board, ran by Shelley Winters, and soon enough discovers Shelley Winters' 14-year-old nymphette of a daughter, Lolita, played very brilliantly by Sue Lyon. He immediately becomes sexually infatuated with her, despite her age, and they both fall in love with each other. However, the big question is, how can they get away with this? And will the love truly last? I mean, she's a child. Still captivated to see this film? Like I said, the plot is very immoral, among many other things. But I still give credit to all of the filmmakers involved on this project, because I'm putting away the fact of how troubling the story is, and I'm looking at it from a filmmaking perspective. Based on the novel of the same name by Vladimir Nabokov, this is one of the major film adaptations where the author highly praised its adaptation, despite the fact that Kubrick had to make some changes. For instance, the title character's age actually had to change to age 14 versus the original novel's age, which was 12. 12 years old. Also, he had to cut a lot of more sexual things and unnecessary fluff because, as we all should know, there are some things in books that just don't translate well to film, right? I know a lot of people find lead actor James Mason's narration distracting and unnecessary, but I really don't mind it. I mean, it's James Mason. Come on. He played Captain Nemo. He's incredible. Speaking of which, I feel this is one of the greater films where Kubrick really added more care to the actors' performances, which he really had to. It's a character-driven piece, not a visually driven piece. So I respect him for that. If you have the curiosity and courage to see it, I would honestly recommend seeing it at least once, because if you like watching controversial drama, you hit the jackpot here. Number 6, Barry Lyndon. Another fascinating and visually stunning adaptation of a novel by William Makepeace Thackeray, the famed author of Vanity Fair. This chronicles the adventures and yet mishaps of the Irish rogue Redmond Barry, who falls in love with a family member, has a duel, goes to war, meets a rich widow, and takes on her husband's high-appointed position in politics. I remember seeing this film when I was in high school, and I remember falling asleep after 20 minutes. I'm not kidding. I watched it again to give it another chance. Fell asleep after an hour. Third and fourth time, oh yeah, I was in dreamland. Two things that came to me after those experiences. Either I had no idea what all the praise was about for this movie, or I really gotta stop watching long period pieces at night. The truth honestly falls on the latter, because this film is absolutely stunning and visually delicious. This takes place in the 18th century, and Kubrick paced this film at the speed of smell. Remember, there was no major technology in this period of the 18th century, so Kubrick was building an experience for us to get into these characters' state of mind with the slow zooms, the slow panning. And with this setting, to an average moviegoer, is revolting. But to a filmmaker and historian, this approach is absolutely brilliant. To increase its authenticity, Kubrick only used about 2% artificial lighting. Everything else was done by natural light and candles. He was able to do that with specially made candles and 50mm Zeiss camera lens made for NASA. He got lenses from NASA to film this baby. If any film within Kubrick's works would label him as a control freak and perfectionist, it'd be this one, for sure. Well, it'd be all of them. But this one is where he had 50 to 100 takes of certain scenes. At this point, you'll just say he just cares so much about his craft. His 3-hour opus here earned Kubrick, personally, 3 Academy Award nominations for Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Picture of the Year. If you have a dear love for period costume pieces and 18th century restoration pieces, you will definitely admire and enjoy this one. Number 5, The Shining. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this iconic horror classic at number 5 for me. I'll say it right now, these next top 5 spots are incredibly difficult for me, because each and every one of them are so significant. It is the utterly powerful film adaptation of Stephen King's classic book of the Torrance family going up to the beautiful Overlook Hotel to be the caretakers during the winter. Over the course of time, the patriarch, Jack, played by Jack Nicholson, starts to grow more and more insane. You know what's crazy is that there are so many people that don't like scary movies, but they love The Shining. It's watched every Halloween by most. It's definitely one of the more popular re-releases in theaters because of that, and it never disappoints in the fright department. Of course, it's controversy galore because of how Stephen King disowns and hates this adaptation because of how disloyal it is to his book, the heavy confrontations between Kubrick and actress Shelley Duvall on this film, that she suffered a breakdown, and a lot of tension on this set, but whenever there's stress and tension, Kubrick would bust out the chessboard and play with his cast and crew like in all of his films. Yes, it's got so much controversy, and so many rewrites. It was crazy how many times they rewrote this film. But I feel the overall product, this film, like majority of Kubrick's films, is absolutely spellbinding. Why do you think it has such a long following? Even though when it was initially released, it was totally mixed. But now, everyone wants to watch it every Halloween. It is indeed one of the most influential horror films that have ever been made. And I respect Kubrick 100% for all the efforts that he did put into it. Number 4, Full Metal Jacket. Regarded by so many as not only the greatest Vietnam War movie ever, but the greatest war movie ever. I would honestly say I disagree with both of those statements, but this would easily be in the top 5. Kubrick earned another Academy Award nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay, along with Michael Herr and Gustav Hasford, respectfully, and damn, this is a great flippin' film. I first saw this film as a 12-year-old, and the first half of this film, where all of the Marine recruits are on Paris Island, are a teenage boy's paradise. With all the cursing, all the insults, and all the training, it was just amazing to me. As I matured, of course, I have just admired this film for all of its efforts. Being another film adaptation of the book, The Short Timers, it has just a raw feeling, and the screenplay feels so organic that it doesn't feel adapted. That's why Kubrick was usually so masterful at writing, and even though he was such a perfectionist, he gave films like this one its room to grow and improvise. Specifically, and notably, R. Lee Ermey as Drill Sergeant Hartman. He let him improvise freely because of Ermey's experience in the Marines, and thank God he did, because it was just gold. It's one of the few films that really blew my mind in its structure, with Act 1 being so powerful, and then Act 2 opening up right in the middle of Vietnam. Some people say it slows down a bit, but I say, like Barry Lyndon, Kubrick gave us time to adjust to the monotony and tension of war. Definitely a war film for the ages. Number 3, A Clockwork Orange. My God, what a terrifying piece of filmmaking. Kubrick earned his triple nominations for Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Picture of the Year for this infamous and shocking film. Based on the novel of Anthony Burgess, it tells the story of Alex Delage in a futuristic Britain that looks a lot like the 1960s. Interesting. But here we have a young kid who gets his kicks with ultraviolence, rape, and Beethoven. He leads his team of droogs through the streets of London night after night with these actions until he gets caught and put into prison. But then volunteers to be part of an experimental program where convicts are programmed to basically reform and to test anything violent. Okay, I have to be completely transparent here. I loved this movie as a kid. Why? Because it was a film that was very much a no-no for me. By the time I turned 14 and in high school, I was aching to see it because of how controversial it was. I somehow was able to sneak this movie from my parents, from Hollywood Video. Oh, Hollywood Video. You guys miss that place? Yeah. Anyway, I was able to rent it and I watched it by myself. And I have never seen anything like this. I felt so sick to my stomach when I first saw it. The protagonist, Alex, was supposed to be around my age, and he's getting away with all these horrible things. I already had my moral compass working well by age 14, so when I watched this film unfold right in front of me, I was definitely taken aback, shocked, and yet fascinated. As I've grown older and have seen it many more times, I can honestly say I'm more turned away by this film, that I honestly can't watch it that much. I know what you're thinking, then why put it in the top 5, man? And here's why. This film is one of the first of the early 1970s films that showed the nature of sadomasochistic actions. And it really changed the audience with asking, who in the heck do we relate to? Who can we even root for? Because film was always built around having a hero, right? And here is a classic case of anti-hero. Kubrick depicted behavior and actions from a society that was very selfish. The performances are incredible. Malcolm McDowell as Alex is thrillingly brilliant. The score and the arrangements by Wendy Carlos, amazing. And it is just shot so stylistically that you can't take your eyes off the screen. This also remains the better and more accurate film adaptations of a book, period, which I have read. And it's so tough to say, but I still respect this film for its controversies, its shocking nature. Because in the end, I don't think it glorified violence. It was a satire on violence. Needless to say, Kubrick and his family faced so many death threats because of this film. So many that his manager urged him to leave Britain, his home at the time. To stop the threats, he chose to not distribute this film in the UK, which it became unavailable in its own setting until the year 2000. Despite all of its controversy, it remains one of the most influential, stylistic, and relevant films in cinema history. Number 2, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. The longest title of a movie so far that has been nominated for Best Picture, and is Kubrick's first honor of Best Director and Best Adapted Screenplay Academy Award nominations. Ladies and gentlemen, I love this outrageously hilarious movie. This was one of the films I was talking about earlier, where my friends and I got together and watched, and my mind was just blown with hilarity. And I remember this being one of the movies to study in film class, which was so exciting, because sincerely, it is that great of a political black comedy. It was one of those great times Kubrick had on set, because Peter Sellers' Academy Award nominated performance as 3 characters had him in tears of laughter. Majority of the cast and crew were also military veterans, so there was an air of joy and professionalism while making this film. If you don't know the story, a communist-hating general played by Sterling Hayden decides to attack the Soviet Union with the most destructive bomb without the permission of President Muffley, played by Peter Sellers. So he and the politicians gather in the war room to stop them before it's too late. I know you must have heard the various quotes that are just too hilarious. "Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room." "Mein Führer! I can walk! I'm coming through fine. Are you coming through fine? So we're both fine. Yes, I agree with you. It's good to be fine. Water. That's what I'm getting at. Water. I can't quote this movie enough. You just have to see this amazing movie that was reportedly famed critic Gene Siskel of Siskel and Ebert's favorite movie. You just got to see it. It is definitely one of the best political black comedy that anyone in today's audiences will absolutely enjoy. I know I always give honorable mentions, but I am only going to give one this time. And that is Eyes Wide Shut. Yes, Fidelio. One of the weirdest and outrageous films ever. If you think A Clockwork Orange was out there, oh man, this one was just a trip. It always is regarded as Kubrick's lesser quality films, which I really disagree. I mean, there's got a lot to really admire about. It's one of the last films then husband and wife Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman did together as husband and wife, battling about their future together, and then Cruise goes on an Odyssey-like night adventure full of sexual and moral discovery. I honor it because director Sidney Pollack gives the best performance in this film as Cruise's colleague, and Kubrick masterfully shot it with such beautiful sets, beautiful cinematography, and beautiful costumes. Kubrick also passed away during post-production of this film, but I have to say, it was a great film to close his career with. Number 1. Yes. 2001, A Space Odyssey. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, when I think of Stanley Kubrick, this is the first movie that comes to my mind. This is the definitive film of Stanley Kubrick. Technically, based on the short story The Sentinel by Arthur C. Clarke. It chronicles evolution, beginning with the prehistoric times and the discovery of the first weapon of mankind, then features one of the best jump cuts in cinema. Cutting from the falling bone that's been thrown in the air to a space station millions of years later and taking us on the Odyssey of space. Stanley Kubrick has said himself, if you completely understand this film, they have failed as filmmakers. This film was intended to ask more questions than give answers, which is so brilliant to me. I love films like that, because that's what makes a film so timeless. You see, as we live our lives in society, we go through experiences, positive and negative, right? And then when it comes to movies, if we see something at the age of 5, we gain a certain understanding of it at that age. Then when we get older, we see it another time, we gain something else. And then if we get a little older, say up to 30, we experience something else, right? And so on and so on. But also, the person right next to you can experience something completely different and have a different interpretation just as you did. This goes for any film, right? And this film, in my opinion, is really no different. You all know this. And it's so relevant because the theme of this film has been opened up many, many times in the course of history, that we can experience something completely different and yet enjoy it just the same. For those of you who are big Kubrick fans and have seen this film, you guys can understand its brilliance. To the average moviegoer who has always heard about this movie but has never seen it, I'll save you on the space mumbo jumbo, but if there's anything to take away from this film, is the discovery of visual special effects made by mankind. Watch the documentary 2001, The Making of a Myth, about how they created the special effects, because it will just blow your mind on what they did. How amazing for a film to talk about man versus machine, and then showcase what man can create as he goes against the big battle of space and nature. The evolution never stops. They accomplished such a feat of visual effects that Kubrick and his team won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects in Film. It was unfortunately Stanley Kubrick's only Academy Award in his career. Kubrick was also honored, of course, with the Best Director and Best Adapted Screenplay Academy Award nomination as well. Seriously, as reported by many, many artists, without this film, there would not have been Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Without this film, there would not have been a George Lucas's Star Wars. It's made that much of an impact, and that's why it stands the test of time in cinema. Stanley Kubrick was a true artist, a quiet, controversial, and yet intelligent human being with such a great sense of humor. That's one of the great big reasons I love his films, because in every film, as dark as they are, they still have such great sense of humor. He has inspired a whole new generation of filmmakers, and his imprint in film will definitely stay with all of us forever. So there you have it, folks. Do you agree with my ranking? What are your favorite films, and which film of Stanley Kubrick has made such an impact for you? Please share in your comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you like this, please click like, subscribe, ring the bell so you can stay updated on more to come, and share this video with all your friends and family who love films. Do whatever the heck you want. But until then, guys, thank you so much for watching, and please keep the classics alive.